glad to see everyone here. So welcome, I'm Jean, and welcome to tonight's talk about gray seals and great white sharks of Cape Cod. I'm very happy to have naturalist and photographer Bob Michelson here with us tonight for this presentation. But before we begin, let me tell you that I'm going to mute you all as you enter the call. So please save your questions until the end of the hour or type them into the chat box, and I will pose them to our speaker when he's finished with the presentation. But if you have something really pressing you want to ask him, I think it'll be okay with you.
Absolutely. You feel free to ask questions as we make our way through each slide if you have one.
Okay, very good. So you will have the ability to unmute yourself at the end to ask something. Also, I'm filming this program for Milton Access Cable TV, and it will be available to view at a later date. And I want to thank the Friends of the Milton Public Library for their support of my programs. Now, let me tell you about our speaker. Bob's work has appeared in numerous magazines, and he's been diving for 42 years. He's a PADI dive master, a specialty instructor in underwater photography and videography, a naturalist, and a PADI Project Aware Fish ID based in Braintree, Mass. His company is called Photography by Michelson, and his website is www.pbmphoto.com. All lowercase. I'll put that in the chat. If you'd like to learn more about him, I'll post this. And so now please join me in a warm welcome for Bob.
Thank you, Jean. Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about the gray seals and great white sharks of Cape Cod. Now, I got involved in this project because 6 years ago, and even through today, this guy's getting all the media attention and media hype, the great white shark. I wanted to look into it a little bit deeper. Why are they here in ever-increasing numbers each and every year? So in the last 10 years, biologists have counted 800 individual white sharks off the coast of Massachusetts, 800 great white sharks from 12 to 17 feet in length, weighing up to 3,500 pounds. And their main diet is gray seals. What happens is 30 years ago, a little background, we had maybe 8,000 gray seals in the totality off the coast of Massachusetts. Fast forward 30 years, we now have over 600,000 gray seals off the coast of Massachusetts living here year-round. So 600,000 large gray seals peeing and pooping in the water. The currents are going from north to south, taking the scent down to the southern tip of Africa. The sharks follow that scent up to Massachusetts every spring and summer, and they're coming back in ever-increasing numbers every single year. So I wanted to look at the food source, not the predator. So we're going to talk a lot about gray seal biology, gray seal physiology, and the relationship between them and the white sharks. So this photo shows approximately 800 gray seals hauled out on a sandbar inside of Chatham Harbor, because I was told by the tour guide that day, just outside the mouth of the harbor was a 17-foot female great white shark hunting these guys. And the only safe way for them to not get eaten is to get out of the water. In the middle of this is the male. The male is right here. He's referred to as a bull. Bulls get up to 10 feet long and weigh up to 1,000 pounds. He's surrounded by his harem of about 20 females, which are also referred to as cows. The cow or female will grow up to about 6.5 feet long and weigh between 450 and 550 pounds, both of which are a lot of meat and fat that the white sharks thrive on. So you figure a 10-foot long, 1,000-pound male, one of these 17-foot sharks will cut it in half in one bite and eat the whole animal. And they'll feed more frequently as the water temperatures increase in temperature because they're cold-blooded, and a little bit less frequently when the water cools off in the late fall months before they part company and head back down to the coast of southern coast of Africa. Here's some size comparison for you. On the far left are 4 adult harbor seals. Harbor seals are the smaller cousins that we see around here by the hundreds of thousands every year. As an adult, they're about 4 feet long and weigh about 150 for a female and 250 for a male. Then we have a female gray seal right here. She's 6.5 feet long and weighs about 550 pounds. And in front of her is her 2-week-old gray seal pup that at 2 weeks of age is already the size of a fully grown harbor seal. It's just amazing to put into perspective that this seal is only 2 weeks old and it's already as big as a fully grown adult harbor seal is. This is a photograph courtesy of Dr. Wendy Perrier with the Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine at Tufts University. She conducted surveys every single winter, and she still does, off of Muskegon Island, which is a small island off of the coast of Nantucket. We are between Muskegon Island and Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge, which, if you look at a map, it's the finger that sticks south into the Atlantic off of the elbow of Chatham, the elbow of Cape Cod. That's now a National Marine Wildlife Sanctuary. And both Monomoy and Muskegon Island are known breeding grounds and pupping grounds for gray seals. Dr. Perrier did some archaeological excavation and found that archaeological remains going back 5,000 years puts gray seals mating and giving birth on Muskegon Island and Monomoy 5,000 years ago. She also found the remains of white sharks, which were hunting gray seals 5,000 years ago, and pods of orca or killer whales hunting the white sharks, hunting gray seals. So we're basically going back to how we were 5,000 years ago naturally. The seals are coming back in ever-increasing numbers. The sharks are coming back to pursue their favorite food source in ever-increasing numbers. Now to my adventure. In order to get on and film commercially on National Wildlife Refuge, you have to file for a permit through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That process took 6 months to get 2 days out on this property during a 6 week window in the middle of the winter time. And because I was hoping to get within 150 feet of marine mammals, which are protected by the Marine Mammal Act of 1973, I needed to get a second federal permit through the National Marine Fisheries Service, part of NOAA. That took 6 months. A week before I'm scheduled to go out in mid to late December, I got both permits in hand. Now the weather starts to play its normal New Englandness on me. 3 weeks go by out of a 6 week breeding window and the weather is not cooperating. It's too windy, we can't get out to the island. They use small skiffs to travel through the shallow western side of Monomoy, which is shallow mud and sand flats. And unless the wind is a certain direction and under a certain wind speed, you can't get out there because they're extremely safety conscious. Finally, the weather breaks. It's January 20th, 2017. I get a phone call the night before. We're meeting at the dock at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Be there with all your equipment ready to go. Well, I'm there at 6:30 because my version of being early is a half an hour early. I'm never on time, I'm always early. I was early for Gene tonight by half an hour as well. That's just how I am, that's how I fly. So I'm waiting at the dock at 6:30 in the morning for these folks to show up at 7. They show up at 7:30 and announce, oh, we didn't buy our food yet for the week because they go out and stay on this island for a week at a time. I'm only going out there for 1 day. Off they go to the supermarket. They come back at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm on the first boat to go out to Monomoy. We finally get there at 11. I'm scheduled to be back at my car at 3:30 in the afternoon, and we haven't gotten to where the seals are yet. They took us on the western side of Monomoy. We had to cross over 1.5 miles through snow to get to this lighthouse on the other side of the island facing the East Coast. Well, it just so happens that the night before, the largest blizzard to hit Cape Cod in 20 years hit Monomoy, dumping 3 feet of snow on Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge. We were walking through 5 and 6 foot snow drifts 1.5 miles to get to the lighthouse. Needless to say, 2 hours later, we got there. I'm exhausted. I was not as thin as I am right now. I weighed 50 pounds more. I was exhausted. And they say, okay, it's time for you to go back to the boat, Mr. Michelson. You're the first one back to shore. I hadn't taken a single photo. 6 months of paperwork and filing for permits. I finally get out there. I haven't even taken a single photo, and it's telling me to go back yet. I was devastated. One researcher, who I call my snow angel, said, Mr. Michelson, get your camera ready. I know where the seals. I'm going to go out. I'll scout the area. I'll be right back for you in 5 minutes. She comes back. She says, follow me with your camera and your tripod. We go 100 yards east of the lighthouse and look due north. And these seals were little dots in the picture. it turns out is a large male making contact with a female who has not yet mated for the season. In front of them is another female feeding her now 3-week-old gray seal pup. Now, they don't care who's feeding pups. When they're ready to mate, they don't care who they roll over. So I was told, I was given a lot of education before going out there. And with any subject before I die, I pick up my camera and start taking photos. I read all about it. I do my homework. And they told me that if I see this behavior, 2 seals going nose to nose, they want photos of it. Because this is how they're spreading a seal virus going around the northeastern United States right now. So I'm snapping away, figuring I've got 25 minutes to take all my photography for my 6 months worth of permitting. I better get everything I can get. So I thought these were 2 males introducing themselves to each other, and they tell me, no, that was a male and female at the introductory portion of mating. Do we have any children on this presentation right now?
No, we do not.
Okay, they're all adults. Good.
Yeah.
Because Bob's the first person in the United States to ever document gray seals mating in the wild.
Oh,
Male starts to arch his back and show off to the female, who's resistant. She doesn't want to mate with him just yet. He then pounces on her with all 1,000 pounds to convince her to be his girlfriend and to consummate their relationship together. And after a 15-minute argument, they finally got together and made children. The proper term's copulating, but if there's children, I try to skip over the slide completely, not really discuss it, but they're copulating right now. And then they lit a cigarette when they were done. We have children here?
Uh-oh.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna move on and let Mom explain this one.
okay.
Okay, now we have a family. The male's laying down in the middle behind Mom. Mom's on the top left. A 3-hour-old newborn baby seal pup is on the snow to the right. And I know it's a newborn because you can still see the amniotic fluid sitting in the snow from where this guy was born 3 hours earlier. He's still covered in orange or yellow. I don't know if you can make it out on your computer screens or not. And he's sitting in red amniotic fluid in the snow. So the interesting thing is once Dad and Mom get together and create the child, Dad takes off and gets together with up to 19 other girlfriends. He has no parental responsibilities at all. Mom gives birth to the pup, feeds them, weans them, and shoos them on their way when they're 3 weeks old. So Dad just happened to be in the photo when I took this picture. This is the 3-hour-old gray seal pup, still covered in amniotic fluid in yellow and orange coloration, and you can still see the fluid in the snow in the foreground. So this guy was just born 3 hours before we got there. Amazing. So this is a 3-hour-old pup. He's already 3 feet long and weighs 30 pounds at 3 hours old. Now, there's 5 different phases in the development of a gray seal pup that all take place over a short 3-week period. Phase 1, the seals are all pure white in coloration. There's no color at all mixing in. This light fluffy coat's called Merigo, M-E-R-I-G-O, and it's pure white for the first week of the animal's life. That's a phase 2 pup. Phase 1 is the newborn I showed you earlier. Here's a phase 1. Here's a phase 2, pure white. Phase 3, it's now a week and a half old, and it's starting to develop some gray, black markings throughout its nose, face, tail area, flipper area, and the body. This is a phase 3 gray seal pup at a week and a half old. They're gaining 10 pounds of body mass per day under the mother's rich milk. Here's a phase 4 gray seal pup, 2 weeks old, starting to look more like a gray seal, developing a neck. He can now lift his head up and move it around. The first couple of phases, he's a slug in the snow and he doesn't move at all. Mom will find him out of all these seals that are on that beach and feed her pup. If any other moms start to interfere, she'll do battle with them to chase them away. They're very protective of the young. They only give birth to 1 to 2 pups every other year. Because Mom's pregnant with the pup for 11 months. She gets pregnant in December. The following December, January, she'll give birth to that pup. So it's an 11 to 12-month gestation period. Now we have a phase 5 gray seal pup. This is a male. Males turn jet black in color, and their heads start to develop the shape of a horse. So gray seals are called horse heads because of the shape that the male has in its head. A gray seal is a horse head. Gray seal females have a white and black mottled pattern on their body. So if you're down on Cape Cod or anywhere between Cape Cod and Maine right now, there are gray seals everywhere along our coast, North Shore, South Shore, Cape Cod Bay, the coastal side, the Atlantic side of Cape Cod, all the way up to the Isles of Shoals in Maine and New Hampshire, Bar Harbor, Booth Bay. They're everywhere. And there's white sharks everywhere chasing those animals as well. So if you think you're up in Hampton Beach and you're safe from white sharks, you're mistaken. So I'm going to start with my lecture at this point. If you see seals in the water bobbing around or up on the beach, do not go any deeper than knee deep in the ocean, period. If you go any deeper than knee deep, you're prone to being attacked by a white shark, mistaking you for a seal. This is only where you see seals in the water or hauled out on a beach or up on rocks. If you don't see any seals present, you're pretty safe to go swimming at any depth. But please be aware that this time of year through October especially, sharks are very active because the water is warming up rapidly. It's now south of Cape Cod, the ocean temperature is 74 degrees. A white shark will feed every 3 days at that water temperature. North of Cape Cod and Cape Cod Bay and points north, mid-50s to low 60s. Sharks are getting friskier and more hungry. They'll eat once a week here. So this is a female gray seal. Here's a female gray seal in the water off of Chatham when I went on a seal tour with my wife. There's plenty of opportunities to get close to these animals legally. Seal tours are permitted and regulated by the federal government to be within 150 feet of seals under federal permit. As long as they don't approach the seal and the seal approaches them, they're not liable for harassment of the animal. If you approach a seal and you're less than 150 feet away from it, you're exposing yourself to federal harassment charges. That means loss of everything you have with you, loss of your vehicle, your house, your savings, possible imprisonment. It's not worth it, folks. Watch these animals from a distance unless you're on a sanctioned seal tour. So we're on a seal tour out of Orleans for this particular cruise. And here's a female. Her coat is mottled white and black, sticking her head up about 50 feet behind the boat saying hello. And I use powerful telephoto lenses to not be intrusive with these animals. Here's an underwater photo of a harbor seal up in the Isles of Shoals in New Hampshire. Harbor seals have the face of a dog. So harbor seals are called dog faces. We have both species plentiful throughout New England. Harbor seals are smaller. They used to have all of Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge. I'm going to show you a photo in a moment where biologists counted 731 seals from my aerial photo. Now that's all gray seals that displace the harbor seals. Harbor seals are moving further into harbors and bays where they're not being harassed by the larger gray seals for space. So this is an aerial photo I took at an altitude of 1,000 feet off of Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge 30 years ago. And in this photo, biologists counted 731 harbor seals, 8 gray seals 30 years ago. Now it would be 8,000 plus gray seals, 0 harbor seals. They've all been displaced by the larger gray seal. Here are all female gray seals that hunker together on a sandbar inside of Chatham Harbor to escape an outside large 17-foot white shark just outside the breakwater hunting gray seals. There are carcasses all over the place down there. Don't be prepared to be grossed out because you're going to see them. Half seal carcasses everywhere. They'll hit the seal, they'll eat half of it, they'll leave the other half if they're not hungry enough. And it washes ashore. Now to the research side of this. Dr. Puryear and her crew go out to Monomoy and Muskegon every winter during 6 weeks, and they tag about 50 gray seal pups every winter. And this shows the proper technique. Here's Elizabeth Stokes, a biological technician from NOAA, showing the proper technique of holding a gray seal pup still while another biologist collects blood samples, puts a tag on its flipper, and does an entire physical workout of the animal. Another person writes down all the data, and everyone is there for support. There's a team of 6 biologists that go out on this island every single winter. So here they're using a paddle as a stick to hold a canvas bag with a baby gray seal inside of it attached to a scale. And they're weighing the seal to see how well it's being fed by their mother, to know that if the seal is going to be surviving or may not survive the winter or not. It depends upon how much care mom's providing to it. If they don't put on enough weight and enough girth after 3 weeks, they're probably not going to survive, because mom shoos them away after 3 weeks when they're fully weaned, and they're on their own after that. Now the biologists are doing a circumference of the girth of the animal. They have a tape measure that goes around the belly. They do the head, the neck, the flippers, the nose, the head. Every part of the animal gets measured. And all of this is notated. Every animal has its own tag, its own identification. It stays on that animal for the rest of its life. It doesn't fall off. It's riveted onto the flipper of the animal, and it doesn't hurt them. It doesn't impact their ability to swim or walk around. Now they're drawing a blood sample. There's a seal virus going around the northeastern United States, where they're drawing blood samples and taking nasal swabs of all the different seal pups to see if the virus is spread to this particular part of the population or not. Now they're putting rivets on the tag on the flipper, or the back or hind flipper of the gray seal pup is getting this tag put on permanently. They're doing a nostril swabbing to check for viruses again. This is all being done at the same time. They have a set protocol that they cannot keep the seal tied up for more than 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, they have to vacate the area, let mom come back and care for her young, or she might abandon the pup, and they don't want to do that. So the protocol is they have 15 minutes to conduct all their research, and there's people from International Foundation of Wildlife, the New England Aquarium, organizations from around the country come here to help with this research every winter. And they do tag team. There's teams of 6 people on the island for a week at a time for 6 weeks. Here's this is tag number 876. So in the 15 years that this project was going on at this point, this was gray seal number 876 that have been tagged and processed. Then we vacated the area, and they let the mom come back and take care of her pup. The pup was about a week and a half old at this point. Second part of the research is conducted by another NOAA employee, Dr. Stephanie Wood. She does aerial reconnaissance using a drone. She'll fly up to an altitude of 200 feet and do transects. This is a 200-foot wide by 100-foot high transect, and they count the mother pups in each transect. So at the end of a 6-week period, they determined, when I was out there in 2017, 2,500 gray seal pups were born that winter, just that winter. 2,500 gray seal pups were born that winter. White sharks are not eating that many adults every year. So the population keeps expanding. More gray seals keep heading south from Canada. More white sharks keep heading north from the southern tip of Africa to hunt the increasing herd size. And here's part of the story. Here's gray seals feeding just off the coast of Monomoy. Look what's hunting them just out of sight. Here's about a 14-foot long great white shark hunting the gray seals, and they don't even know, because the great white shark is staying downstream of the current, so they cannot smell the sharks in the area. So the shark will come in, hit one of the seals, eat it, and spit out what it doesn't want to eat, or let it float to shore. That's the natural order of things with gray seals and white sharks. They're here, they're not going anywhere. White sharks are coming back in ever increasing numbers every single year. Gray seals are expanding their range. They used to be exclusively to the outer Cape. Now they're still popping on Monomoy and Muskegon Island, but as they mature, they're moving to new habitats throughout the outer Boston Harbor Islands, any islands off the coast of the North Shore, New Hampshire and Maine. They're everywhere now. They're not exclusive to Cape Cod any longer. And they're year-round residents. They don't leave anymore. They stay here year-round. White sharks. Here's a 12-foot-long male. Males are always the shorter of the species. Females can grow up to 17 feet long and weigh 3,500 pounds. They can open their mouth higher than a 55-gallon barrel and take one of us whole in a single bite. They can cut a 10-foot gray seal adult male in half with one bite. Very powerful apex predators or top predators. So this is a male. They give every shark a name. This is Kenobi. And this was photographed on August 11th, 2016. And this is courtesy of, and I have to credit them, the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy and the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. They provided me with all the underwater photography of great white sharks. I will not go in the water with these animals. It's not safe. Here is a larger female. Her name is Pumpkin. She was tagged on September 15th, 2016. Again, courtesy of the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy out of Chatham and the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. I did have some more graphic photos of the white sharks, which I'm not going to put in for a library talk. It shows them swimming around with a partially eaten carcass of a seal. To me, it's kind of gross, and I don't want little kids to be horrified by this. I don't want to scare people out of swimming in the ocean. I just want you to be aware of your surroundings. And again, I'm going to reiterate this. If you're at a beach anywhere in New England right now and through October, and you see seals swimming in the water or up hauled out on a beach or on a rocks, only go up to your knees in the water. Do not go any deeper. If you go waist deep or deeper, a great white shark can come in and get you. So we're trying to avoid that at all costs. From 1936 until 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have a single shark fatality in the Commonwealth. And then 4 years ago, we had 2 attacks in one summer down on Cape Cod. One of them was a fatality. Because there's signs everywhere down on Cape Cod. If you go to the beaches, great white sharks are here. These are the rules and regulations to stay safe. They went out on their surfboards. They didn't pay attention. They got attacked and one of them died. So I'm trying to prevent that, not put the fear of God in you. Please enjoy our beaches. They're beautiful places. Spend your tourist money down on the Cape and other places. Just be aware of your surroundings. If you see seals swimming in the water or hauled out of the water, only go up to your knees in the ocean. There's lakes, there's ponds, there's pools. That's where I prefer to go swimming. Does anybody have any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask me, or you can send them into the chat to Jean and she can relay them.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if anybody wants to ask a question. Yeah, it's worrisome. You know, we used to be able to swim in the ocean.
Well, remember who was here first. The
True.
sharks and the seals were here long before we came to this country. Indigenous people knew about these animals. They respected the sea and kept to the shores and fished knee-deep or waist-deep water. They did not play with these fish either. Indigenous people hunted tarpon, Atlantic tarpon that grew up to 12 feet long back then. Our Atlantic tarpon still exists, but now they're on the endangered species listing. And if you see an Atlantic sturgeon that's 6 feet long, that's a big fish right now. And they go up our rivers every spring. So the indigenous people would fish for the sturgeon in the rivers, in the mouth of the rivers. Great white sharks are open ocean predators. They don't come up into the brackish water that has salt and fresh water mixed in. There's only a couple sharks that will deal with fresh water, one of which is a bull shark. And thankfully, we don't get them up here. Bull sharks will come as far north as the Carolinas. They won't come any further north because the water is too cold for them.
How many types of sharks are there?
There's over 200 species of sharks on the planet. We see about 10 of them here in New England. From least dangerous is the large basking shark. Basking sharks can grow to be 40, 50 feet in length, but they're plankton feeders. They'll swim. If you go out on a whale watch, you'll see them swimming out where the whales are feeding. They swim with their mouths open wide just under the surface, and they're filtering out plankton from the ocean. They have no teeth. They have like baleen plating inside their mouths. They're filtering out microscopic plankton. And then there's smaller sharks that hug the bottom, spiny dogfish and smooth dogfish. Spiny dogfish north of Cape Cod, smooth dogfish south of Cape Cod that grow 2 to 3 feet long. They're harmless towards humans. There's sand tiger sharks. They grow up to 8 feet long. They're harmless towards humans. There's sandbar sharks, harmless towards humans. There's tiger sharks, mako sharks, and great white sharks that are found up here. They're potentially hazardous towards humans.
Okay.
So it's up to us to be aware of our surroundings and stay safe. We don't want to swim in murky water. We don't want to swim at dusk or dawn when sharks are active hunting. So don't go 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun's just rising into the ocean and go swimming. A shark might mistake you for a prey and taste you and spit you out, but they've done a lot of damage at that point.
We have one question in the chat, which I want to get to, but did someone else start to ask a question? I thought I heard someone try to do so. Anyone else have a question that they wanted to ask?
You're all going to pass the test?
Well, I was going to ask what the age of how old the seals get, and also how old the sharks get.
Seals, the gray seals can grow up to 35 years of age. But with the amount of predation taking place with the white sharks, the likelihood of them living that long are about 50%. So I'm told by biologists that the gray seals have an expected lifespan between 20 and 35 years. Around here in Massachusetts, where there's more active gray seals being predated on by the white sharks, that's more closely to 15 and 20. White sharks have no natural predators other than killer whales. Killer whales will go after white sharks to get their liver. So when we see pods of orcas hunting great white sharks off of Cape Cod, which we see more frequently now, they're going after the liver of the shark, which is the largest organ of that animal. And they'll eat the liver and let the rest of the body float. They're not going to eat the rest of the shark. You only go after the liver. And the gray seals are eating whatever they can sink the teeth onto: striped bass, flounder, cod, haddock, halibut, any fish that lives in the ocean around here. And believe me when I tell you, even with 600,000 seals, there are plenty of fish for fishermen to pursue. There are commercial watermen down on the Cape that want to have the bounty on seal pelts. Back in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, Massachusetts had a bounty where if you killed a seal of any species and turned it into the state, they would give you a $5 bounty. Then with the enactment of state laws in 1968 in Maine, 1969 in Massachusetts, and then with the federal enactment of the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1973, all marine mammals are now protected from harm or harassment. In fact, under the federal law, if you harass any marine mammal, whether it be endangered or just plain abundant like a gray seal, you can go to jail if you harass a seal. So if you're in the presence of seals of any species, stay at least 150 feet away from them. Federal law says you can be 150 feet away and stay and watch and take photos and observe the seals. If you go within 150 feet, you can be arrested for harassment. So that's federal law. State law is pretty much regulated by federal law. So it's this 150-foot rule applies here in Massachusetts as well. So,
yeah.
and basically harassment is if you alter their behavior. If you approach a haul out of seals and you get too close and they book it into the water, you've harassed the seals. You've altered their behavior. They're out of the water to sun themselves. Now remember, gray seals are Arctic seals. Our winter is their summer. So they haul themselves out on sandbars and rocks all around New England at our winter time, because to them it's summertime and they're enjoying the heat of the sun, even though it's December and January here in New England and we think it's bitterly cold out. To them it's mild. compared to what it is up in the Arctic.
Interesting. Juan, did that answer your question? Okay, so the next question from Ginger. Do any groups ever intervene to help the failing 3-month-old pup survive?
If a marine mammal has been stranded or is injured, there's a marine mammal stranding network put in place, managed by NOAA, National Marine Fisheries Service, and it involves the Mystic Aquarium, the New England Aquarium in Boston, the Cape Cod, oh goodness, I can't remember the full name of it. It's the Massachusetts Audubon Center in Wellfleet is a triage facility for injured marine mammals and sea turtles. So if a seal is injured or abandoned, Massachusetts Environmental Police or State Police will call the New England Aquarium or the Mystic Aquarium, or there's an outfit up in Maine as well that takes care of Maine and New Hampshire. I can't remember the name of it. It'll come to me. They're all given specific regions that they're responsible for responding and bringing back these animals and caring for them. And the New England has a facility here in Quincy next to where I live in Braintree that they take care of sea turtles every winter. They have a facility in Boston at the New England Aquarium in Boston. There's a place in the basement. They'll bring orphaned or injured seals and care for them in the basement of the aquarium. They have tanks in the basement in the back of the building that's off limits to the public, where they will care for these animals. The same with the Mystic Aquarium in Connecticut. So there are teams of professionals in place in all regions of the Northeast that will respond and take care of an injured or orphaned gray seal or harbor seal or harp seal. We get harp seals here in the wintertime occasionally, hooded seals occasionally in the wintertime. Those are all strict Arctic species. They stay on ice floes. And the only time we see a hooded seal or a harp seal is when we have ice floes in Quincy Bay and Boston Harbor. They'll come up into Quincy Bay and hang out in the ice floes 2 miles off the coast. I've seen adults in Salt Marsh and Weymouth for a harp seal and a baby harp seal on an ice floe in Quincy Bay. I have photos of both of them. And I stay at least 150 feet away, which is what's required by law. I use powerful telephoto lenses.
Well, okay, Bob. So if they like they like cold weather,
Yes.
if their summer is our winter, then why are they coming to warmer where it's warmer here? Why are they coming?
I'm gonna go back and revisit what I mentioned earlier. Historic findings showed that gray seals breed and give birth to their pups in 2 locations: Muskegon Island off of Nantucket, Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge off of Chatham. They will come back en masse by the thousands, hundreds of thousands. If mom is going to mate this year, come back next year and give birth to her pup. So they know out of instinct, they have to come back to those 2 land masses to mate with a partner or give birth to the young every winter. And then they like it around here. They usually don't leave. They stay here year round now. So right now it's August 2nd. You can go on a seal tour down on Chatham and see thousands of gray seals everywhere. They don't leave anymore. They're here year round. That's why the white sharks are coming back in ever increasing numbers. White sharks, again, are cold-blooded top predators or apex predators. And as the water warms up, they get more active because they're cold-blooded. Warmer water triggers them to eat and digest their food more rapidly. So south of Cape Cod, the water temperature is 75 degrees Fahrenheit right now. They're killing and eating a seal every 3 days. By the end of the summer, the ocean temperature down there can be over 80. They're going to be eating a seal once every 2 days.
Pretty
And
fascinating.
the specific places, there's a place off of Chatham called Seal Cove by the locals. It's called Seal Cove because that's where white sharks are known to herd the seals into a cove and attack them and kill the seals in that cove. So they call it Seal Cove, Seal Cove. And it's in Chatham. It's a known hunting ground, a known kill zone for gray seals. And there's carcasses everywhere around there. Any other questions?
Yes, one more question here from Alana. how could you tell the pup's age in terms of hours?
I had expert seal researchers with me, and they told me, looking at the photo, that seal was 3 hours old. They could tell from the color of the marigo, the coat. It still had orange, yellow, and it still had its amniotic fluid on it. Amniotic fluid, it's AM, amniotic fluid, and mom hadn't cleaned it off yet. So it was only 2 to 3 hours old. And it still was sitting in its amniotic fluid on the snow. It hadn't moved one iota.
Huh. Interesting, fascinating. Okay, any more questions from our audience? Everyone's very quiet, Bob. You can
Well,
unmute
what
yourself.
about your,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask about your photography. Is that what you do? Just photograph marine animals or?
I photograph underwater. I'm an underwater photographer, wildlife photographer. I photograph any interesting animal that I find is fascinating to me. I've been documenting marine mammals and fish my entire life since I was 21. I've been scuba diving now since 1979.
Mhm.
And I got into scuba diving then to pursue underwater photography. So I've been photographing the sea around here for a very long time.
Mhm.
And I document the entire biology of every fish that I photograph. So I have the entire biology of striped bass, Atlantic salmon, brook trout, every species of fresh and saltwater fish you can think of. I've got photos of all of them. They're all up on my website that Gene gave you earlier. Marine mammals I've been photographing these guys for my entire life. I've been out on the water since I was 3 years old in Boston Harbor. I've been photographing seals since I was probably 10.
Mm.
I'm now in my mid 60s.
And you do that for a living or you
I do this for a living. I give presentations to libraries all around the state. I write for 30 different magazines across the country. I write the stories and I illustrate them with my own photography. I
Mhm.
lecture at senior centers. I lecture in school districts. I like to stay busy. And then prior to the pandemic, I was an active wedding photographer, corporate photographer and videographer. And now the pandemic's coming to an end, supposedly, and now everyone has these things. Well, they don't need a professional photographer anymore. They're taking pictures with their smartphone, then calling me, I have these crummy pictures with my smartphone. Can you fix them? No, I didn't take them. I can't touch them. Copyright, you own the copyright, you have to fix them. So,
And you know, Bob, he has these wonderful talks about all kinds of other things, which he's told us about.
do you want to tease the audience about our November talk?
Yes, actually, he's coming to talk. Well, we're going to do it via Zoom, but it's about wild turkeys. He's
On
gonna
November
talk
7th.
November 7th, before Thanksgiving. Now, you can't eat them because they're not really edible, wild turkeys. But they're pretty fascinating animals, and they are around in our area. In fact, I think my husband was chased at the bank by some not that long ago. So they come and they're very intimidating for people, and I think that people are kind of interested.
2 years ago, the middle of May, just before Memorial Day weekend, I had a mother called the hen and her 9 baby turkeys called poults come through a crack between a post in our house into our backyard. They wouldn't leave. They destroyed our garden. Mom dragged all of our squash plants into a pile, and all of her babies snuck up underneath her on top of the squash plants.
Oh, no.
I got some great photos of 1-week-old baby turkeys called turkey poults, Poults, which is in the presentation. You'll see that.
Mhm.
We have the entire biology of the eastern wild turkey, along with research taking place up in the state of Maine right now. It's a really cool topic there. They used to be, I'll just tease you with this. Back in the day, Ben Franklin wanted the eastern wild turkey as our national bird, but the bald eagle won out. Imagine the jokes around the world if our national bird was a turkey. We're not even going to talk about politics, just the bird. Our national bird is the turkey. Can you imagine the jokes around the world? Thank God we picked the bald eagle, a bird of strength.
The bald eagle. We also had a very interesting talk that Bob did about coyotes, which I found fascinating, which are becoming more commonplace here in New England, right, Bob?
And we have more talks also on bobcat and the American black bear, which will be in the Milton Braintree area within the next 5-10 years, denning, giving birth to new babies.
Hmm.
Yay us. Right now, black bear and bobcat are in Greater Hartford, Connecticut, moving east, south, and north from Hartford. Yes, downtown Hartford has black bears and bobcats. And black bear and bobcats are denning as far east as Worcester. And all throughout Merrimack Valley, Lowell, Lawrence, Methuen have black bears and bobcats right now. They're moving this way. They're going to be here within 5 to 10 years, folks. We have rogue males seeking out new territory right now that we hear about in the news weekly here in the South Shore. Males will go up to 100, 120 miles from where they were born. Females will go 10 to 15 miles from where they were born. So figuring Worcester's 30 miles from here, I'm giving it about 5 years to have females showing up and digging out dens and giving birth to the young around here.
So why is this changing? Why is that changing?
Man, we've been very good at screwing up the environment. We destroyed all their natural habitat. They're running out of places to live. Milton was here before Milton, black bear and bobcats were in Milton and Braintree before Milton and Braintree existed.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have houses, we have apartment complexes, we have commercial properties, we have the South Shore Mall, or what's left of it.
Yeah.
We have the library in Milton. We have the hospital next to the library in Milton, the senior center. Displaced all the wildlife. There's no place for them to go, so they're expanding wherever there's room. South and east, or south and north of where they were currently living.
Well, I think that's a tragedy, but
So
I
those are
suppose we have to
future
lose some
topics.
reason. Yes.
Those are future topics for you, Gene.
Yes, very good. I have your list. Thank you, Bob. So are there any more questions about gray seals and white sharks? I didn't.
I had a question.
Yes. Steve.
I was speaking with a commercial fishing boat on the Bass River. The captain and crew, they take charters out to mainly catch striped bass out on the rips at the end of Monomoy. And they're discouraged that when they come back with their catch and they clean the fish, the majority of them have worms. I guess this huge seal population is pooping in the water, and the fish are eating the poop, and the fish have worms, and then the fish that are caught have to be thrown out. You're familiar with the magnitude of this problem, and if there's any solution other than culling the seal population?
Well, I don't think there's going to be a hunt allowed for seals ever again, to be honest with you. Excuse me a second. The laws in place to protect marine mammals are not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Regardless of who's in the White House and who's in charge of Congress, those laws are not going to go anywhere. There'd be an uproar. I know a waterman out of Chatham Harbor that during the season, he takes fly fishermen out to the Chatham Flats, and they'll catch 50 striped bass in a single day, release most of them. You're only allowed, I think, to keep 1 or 2 striped bass per day, I believe.
Yeah.
And they have to be a minimum, I believe, a minimum 28 inches in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So you can only keep 1 or 2 striped bass per day, but there's a very strong fishery still for striped bass, even with the gray seals and the sharks there. There's lots of fish around. The striped bass population has completely rebounded from when it collapsed in the 70s and 80s. It's a true success story in the recovery of that particular species. Worms in the fish, I don't know anything about that. I'm sorry. But if that's a problem, the feds and the state management, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, need to work on a solution for that. I don't know
what it seems to two opposite goals. You got protecting the seals and protecting the health of the fish.
Right.
But the fish seem to be coming back up here in ever increasing numbers every year. So something's right that they're here in larger numbers every year. I can't attest to the health of the striped bass, but their numbers are greatly increased from what they were 30 years ago.
Yeah, I guess the worms might not impact the fish's survivability. It just impacts their edibility.
Their edibility. Yeah, but you'd think their health would be affected by all that, the feces in the water from.
Striped bass are opportunistic feeders. They'll eat anything and everything in the ocean. So if they're eating seal poop, it's because it's available and they're gonna eat it. And all that is processed fish.
Hmm.
So you're eating processed fish that the seals poop back out into the ocean, and they're gonna get some nutrients out of that stuff too.
Yeah, but wouldn't it have bacteria in it, Bob? I mean, I don't know.
I never really sampled the seal's poop to find out, to be honest with you. That's an interesting subject for somebody else, but not me. That goes beyond my realm of expertise.
If you find out, Steve, let me know.
I'm not a poop expert.
Yeah.
I think
Well-
the moral of the story is just buy the fish at the market that was caught elsewhere.
Well, to be honest with you, unless any fish, you can prove where you caught it, I'm not going to eat it anyways, because I'm also a Boston Harbor rat. I grew up in Boston Harbor, catching flounder when I was a kid through a young adult, and would fill up 30-gallon buckets full of flounder and feed our 6 families' households for the entire year on one day's fishing. And then folks came up from New Jersey and New York and overfished our waters, and then we polluted the harbor, and now the flounder that do exist have 2 heads and rotting fins and tumors on their stomachs, and they're sick looking fish. So unless you can prove where you're catching the fish, I'm not going to eat it.
Steve,
Too
would
bad.
those people catching fish and finding the worms in the fish, were they doing it in Seal Harbor? Or
They
where
were no, they're yeah. Well, it's the Chatham side of Monomoy. There's 2 sides of Monomoy. There's like the Yarmouth, Dennis, Harwich side, which doesn't have any seals, but the Chatham Harbor side is where all the seals are.
were all the seals?
And the striped bass are at the tip where the riptides are very strong, but
Hmm.
the seal poop, I guess, reaches, I don't know, maybe the seals go all the way to the end, but.
The seals
um,
actually go out to Stellwagen Bank and dive down up to 600 feet.
Yeah,
But they're feeding out on Stellwagen Bank too. It's not just all Cape Cod. It's the entire Atlantic Ocean they're feeding in.
Hmm.
That much I do know. So, The Grace-
Stellwagen is a tuna fishery, isn't it?
right.
So we got
Stellwagen's a
worms and tuna? I don't know.
They're still catching tuna. Just watch the TV show. You'll see that. There's plenty of tuna. The tuna migrate in here. They don't stay here. They migrate through when they're being caught. And they're pursuing fish that don't eat the poop that the seals might put in the water. Mackerel don't eat seal poop. Herring
Oh,
don't eat seal
interesting.
poop. They're filter feeders. They eat plankton. Plankton don't eat seal poop. Zooplankton or animal plankton, they eat phytoplankton, which is plant plankton, which is the base of the entire food web in the ocean. Plant plankton does not feed on anything but the sun.
What
and they-
about bluefish? Those are plentiful out in that area.
Bluefish are plentiful like striped bass are. They eat the same things.
They eat the seal poop also.
The striped bass and bluefish are both opportunistic feeders. They'll eat the same prey, the same forage species, the same whatever's left in the bottom or in the middle of the water column to eat, they'll eat it. Again, unless you can prove where
About
you're catching it.
lobster.
Oh, lobster. You want me to guess how many people are going to go for a lobster dinner tonight or this weekend? Raise your hand.
I think I remember you talking about
Okay,
this
I'm going to
before,
talk
Bob.
about it now.
Yeah,
Everybody done eating dinner tonight?
he's not gonna eat lobster.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Let me
Oh,
explain.
no.
No,
When
he's
I-
not,
when-
no.
Back in the early 80s, the CD Quincy hired me to document the sources of pollution to bring about the cleanup of Boston Harbor. So I was diving down in Quincy Bay at the bottom in 40 feet of water with raw effluent blowing in my face, videotaping it. All around those outfall pipes were hundreds of lobsters eating what you flush down your toilet.
Oh, Bob.
Oh, what
And-
about Maine lobster? Are they healthy?
If they're not eating around the outfalls of Maine, go for it. I won't eat lobster because I see what they feed on.
Mm.
Lobster, no matter where they're found in the North Atlantic, feed on the same stuff, dead and decaying matter on the seafloor. So lobster will eat poop on the ocean floor, whether it be from you flushing it down your toilet or seals putting it in the ocean naturally.
What about shrimp?
I was just gonna ask him about
They're
crabs.
all
and
members of the
shrimp.
same family. They all eat the same stuff.
What
They
about
are-
clams?
Clams.
Clams and scallops can be depurated. They're brought to a treatment facility where they flush clean, filtered salt water through those animals. All the impurities are filtered out, and you have healthy scallops to eat. Scallops that are sold at a reputable seafood restaurant are healthy to eat. That's the only seafood I will currently eat are scallops.
Not clams?
No,
Not fried clams? No,
I don't like clams.
Oh,
yeah.
Some people like clams, don't. I like scallops.
but they'll be
Oyster-
filtered, those will be filtered too?
Clams are, any filter feeder like a clam or a scallop can be depurated at a depuration plant along the coast. So
Oysters too?
oysters are also filter feeders as well. So oysters, clams, scallops can all be cleaned up before they're put out to market. And they put in these tanks with a high oxygen content going through it with salt water just to flush them out. So all the impurities, all the poisons are flushed out of the scallop, the oyster, the clam, then they're sent to market.
Okay, Bob, what is scrod or whitefish? What does scrod eat?
Scrod is catch of the day. You want to be more specific? I had this conversation with my mother-in-law years ago and I had to provide a written proof.
Okay,
Scrod is catch of the day. It's typically cod. It could be monkfish for all we know. It could be goosefish. Scrod is catch of the day. It's whatever's caught that day is called catch of the day. It doesn't necessarily have to be cod.
but what do they eat? You know what I mean?
What's the species of fish that's the catch of the day?
Okay. But they're
I
not,
answer your question with another question.
so there's a group of opportunistic feeders
Yes.
as to fish, but then there's other fish that are more picky about what they eat.
If there are any fishermen on this Zoom meeting right now, you'll understand this. There's certain species of fish like cod or haddock that you fish with bits of clam or seaworm. Flounder, you fish with seaworms, clam worms, which is seaworms. Different species of fish you pursue with different types of bait. Striped bass, you can use artificial lures that look like fish, or you can use live fish and hook them from the top of the dorsal fin and let them live swim, and the striped bass will hit it and you hook it that way. You're usually using small herring for that, mackerel for that. Different bait for different species of fish.
Okay. Steve, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
I
I
guess-
have to cut down on my seafood.
I was just gonna
consumption.
say that, you know,
No, just go to a reputable seafood restaurant. They will buy their seafood from safe places to be sold and prepared in a safe environment. Certain shacks on the side of the road, I don't know right now. I just don't know. Tony's Clam Shack on Wollaston Beach, sure. The Clam Shack on Wollaston Beach, sure. They've been there forever. They're reputable. Sullivan's is in South Boston, they're reputable. They've been around forever. They buy from reputable places. I wouldn't hesitate to eat their seafood other than I just don't eat it because I see what they feed on.
yeah, just
It
don't eat,
disgusts me, so I won't eat it.
don't eat the lobster.
Illegal Seafoods makes all these claims about having labs and testing and all
And they
this
do,
stuff.
they do. They don't care what the state and federal requirements are for seafood safety. They test their own food themselves. They do. I've seen it. They have a
So maybe
lab.
that's safe.
They have a lab in the seaport. I kid you not.
Yeah.
What about the no-name restaurant?
Is
on the
it still
water?
there?
I don't know, but I love that place.
Yeah,
It's
I
been
loved
around
it too.
forever. It's all these seafood restaurants are monitored by the state board of health. And if anybody was selling less than reputable seafood, they would have been closed down decades ago. At least that's my opinion. But still, being a scuba diver, an underwater photographer, a naturalist, I see what these things eat, and it just disgusts me. I'm not going to eat them.
Yeah,
The
okay.
only seafood I'll eat is scallops.
Yeah,
That's just a
it.
personal choice.
That's our tip of the day, everyone. So does, it's all pretty fascinating. So does anybody have any more questions for Bob while he's here? Until the wild turkey talk.
Any seafood relevant questions? It can be seals, sharks, or fish in general. I don't care.
Everybody's really quiet.
You're all going to be ready for the test?
Oh, is there a test?
No, there's no test.
Oh,
I just like to tease people. Some people don't pay attention. They zone out.
I think people were paying attention. They're just being really quiet. So if
Come on,
that's-
Milton, speak up.
Yeah, if that's all, no one has anything to ask, I guess I will thank you very much for being here. Bob Michelson, this was really a fascinating thing per usual. And I hope you might consider coming back to the Wild Turkey Talk, which will be in November 7th,
And that's,
right?
that's the bird, the wild turkey, by the way, folks.
Yeah,
it's the
it's
bird.
not the, right,
It's not the liquid, it's the bird.
it's, that's right. And don't eat them because they're not very edible. But,
Well, they're
They're-
edible as long as you want to pull all the lead shot out from when you shot them.
I know, my husband always says they look like a big bug, which they kind of do, but they do kind of taste good. So, and speaking of my husband, he has a question, which is, do white sharks eat anything else besides seals? Good question.
They'll eat walruses. They'll eat livestock. Anything that makes its way into the ocean deeper than knee deep is open for predation by white sharks.
Livestock, really? You mean
There are
like-
places, I think it's the UK. Is it the UK or is it Africa? Where they'll throw dead cows off a cliff and white sharks come in and gobble them up.
Oh, I guess they're hungry.
That's how they bury the sharks. They throw them in the ocean. That brings in white sharks and they stay there and they feed on all the dead cows that are thrown in the ocean.
Well, I guess it's
So,
neat.
They'll eat anything that they can get their teeth around, including a human if they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So let's not give them that opportunity.
Yes, let's not. Everyone be careful swimming this summer. And I just want to share that Beatrice says no more lobster. That was her comment for us. So, all right. Well, thanks again. And thank you everyone for being here and happy summer. And maybe I'll see you
See you in the fall.
in the next time. Okay. Good
Bye-bye,
night,
everybody.
everyone. Bye-bye.